What makes it all even more interesting is that each practice seems to generate a new debate among Browns fans. Some players are exceeding expectations, others are facing more questions than ever, and the coaching staff seems determined to let the competition decide everything. Before we get into the details, like this video if you're ready for the return of Browns football. Click the like button and leave a comment if you believe this team can surprise many people this season. Let's go! Something changed on the very first day of mandatory minicamp, and if you're a Browns fan, you need to pay attention because this quarterback battle is no longer theoretical. It's no longer something being discussed only by reporters and analysts. It's happening right in front of us, and the latest developments suggest the competition may be much closer than many people expected just a few weeks ago. For months, there has been a growing assumption about who had the edge in Cleveland's quarterback race. Reports coming out of OTAs seem to indicate that one player had established himself as the favorite. But mandatory minicamp delivered a major twist, and suddenly the conversation has become much more interesting. The Browns coaching staff is sending a message loud and clear. Nobody has won this job yet. The biggest headline from day one was simple. Shedeur Sanders took all of the first-team reps. Every single one. For fans who have been following this competition closely, that's a massive development. It doesn't mean Sanders is the starter. It doesn't mean the competition is over. What it means is that the Browns are giving him a legitimate opportunity to prove he deserves the job. And perhaps more importantly, it proves the coaching staff believes he belongs in this conversation. But before anyone starts declaring winners and losers, there's another important detail. Todd Monken has already explained how the Browns plan to handle minicamp. Sanders received the first-team reps on day 1. Deshaun Watson will receive all of the first-team reps on day 2. Then, on day 3, the reps will be split evenly between the two quarterbacks. That isn't the behavior of a coaching staff that has already made up its mind. That's the behavior of a coaching staff determined to gather as much information as possible before making a franchise-defining decision. And when Monken spoke about the battle, he sounded genuinely excited. He praised Sanders' progress, saying the young quarterback continues to get better and better. But he also made it clear that Watson has played well. In fact, Monken repeatedly emphasized that both quarterbacks are functioning at a high level and both have earned the right to continue competing. That's what makes this situation fascinating. The Browns don't appear to have a favorite, at least not publicly. Monken even admitted he's not ready to name a number 1 quarterback. He specifically stated that both players have performed well enough to continue fighting for the starting job. He likes both quarterbacks. He wants to see them when the pads come on. He wants to see them in training camp. And perhaps most importantly, he wants to see them in preseason games. That means this battle could stretch all the way into August. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reportedly believes that's exactly what's going to happen. According to Fowler, this competition is expected to continue through the preseason, meaning every practice, every drive, and every snap will carry significant weight. And honestly, that's probably the best possible outcome for the Browns. Why rush the decision? If both quarterbacks are playing well, let them compete. Let training camp decide. Let preseason decide. Let performance decide. One of the more intriguing details from minicamp involves how Monken plans to build this offense. He revealed that Cleveland has been putting a major emphasis on scramble drills and extending plays. That's important, because some fans have seen clips of quarterbacks holding the football for 6 or even 8 seconds and wondered what was happening. According to Monken, those situations are intentional. The Browns are actively training quarterbacks to create when plays break down, because he believes those situations happen multiple times during every game. That philosophy could have a huge impact on the offense. Rather than forcing quarterbacks to stay strictly within structure, the Browns appear interested in maximizing mobility and improvisation. Design runs have reportedly been incorporated for both quarterbacks, and Monken clearly believes athleticism should be a weapon rather than something to limit. Then came perhaps the most encouraging numbers from the entire practice. Sanders finished the day completing 25 of 30 passes with a touchdown. Watson completed 15 of 22 passes and threw 2 touchdowns. Both quarterbacks were efficient. Both quarterbacks protected the football. Both quarterbacks moved the offense. But what really stood out about Sanders wasn't just the completion percentage. It was how he achieved it. Reports indicate he's making faster decisions, processing quicker, getting the ball out on time, and taking what defenses are giving him. Those were areas many observers wanted to see improvement in, and, according to minicamp reports, that's exactly what has happened. At the same time, he's still showing the ability to attack vertically when opportunities arise. And that's where the story gets even more interesting, because some of Cleveland's young receivers are starting to make noise too. We'll get into the emerging chemistry between Sanders and several young playmakers, the surprising developments involving Denzel Ward and Grant Delpit, Joel Bitonio's emotional retirement comments, and the offensive line shakeups that could impact this entire team. But first, I want to hear from you, Browns fans. Right now, after everything we've heard from mandatory minicamp, who do you think has the edge in this quarterback competition? Comment below. Watson or Sanders? Another major storyline developing during mandatory minicamp involves the young weapons surrounding this quarterback competition. And, if you're a Browns fan looking for reasons to be optimistic about the future, this is where things start getting exciting. One of the biggest positive developments came from the receiver group. A young receiver who generated plenty of discussion during the draft process reportedly made one of the most impressive catches of the day. On a deep throw from Shedeur Sanders, he went up in traffic and came down with a contested grab that immediately caught attention. For a player whose hands had occasionally been questioned, this was exactly the type of play coaches wanted to see. Reports from practice suggested it was a strong reminder of why Cleveland invested heavily in him and believes he can become a major contributor moving forward. Then there was Denzel Boston. Every time Browns fans seem to hear an update from practices lately, Boston's name keeps showing up. This time was no different. Boston connected with Sanders on a deep touchdown, making another impressive play downfield. It's becoming a trend at this point. Throughout OTAs and now mandatory minicamp, the chemistry between Sanders and Boston has been one of the most consistently positive storylines coming out of Berea. The combination of Boston's size, ball-tracking ability, and willingness to attack the football in the air is beginning to stand out more and more. If these young receivers continue developing at this pace, it could dramatically change the outlook of Cleveland's offense. Because, let's be honest, one of the biggest problems for the Browns last season was a lack of explosive plays. Too often the offense struggled to create chunk yardage. Too often, drives stalled. Too often, defenses weren't threatened vertically. But if these young playmakers continue emerging, suddenly, the Browns could have a much deeper and more dangerous receiving room than many people anticipated entering the offseason. There was also an important update involving Denzel Ward. Ward was present and participating during mandatory minicamp, just as he indicated he would be. For a player who remains one of the cornerstones of Cleveland's defense, seeing him actively involved is obviously encouraging news. The Browns' secondary remains one of the strengths of this football team, and Ward continues to be one of the leaders of that group. However, not every defensive update was as straightforward. One of the more intriguing developments involved Grant Delpit. While Delpit was present at mandatory minicamp, he was reportedly not participating in drills. When Todd Monken was asked about the situation, he declined to provide details. When asked whether it was injury-related, he again declined to comment. That naturally sparked speculation because Delpit is entering the final year of his contract. Now, it's important not to jump to conclusions. There is no confirmed information suggesting a dispute, hold-in, or trade request. But when a key player isn't participating and coaches aren't offering explanations, questions are inevitably going to follow. That's a storyline worth monitoring throughout the remainder of minicamp and into training camp. Another significant development came with the official retirement of Joel Bitonio. For Browns fans, that's the end of an era. Bitonio has been one of the most respected and consistent players this franchise has had over the past decade. During reflections on his career, he shared stories about several former teammates, including Johnny Manziel, Nick Chubb, Christian Kirksey, David Njoku, and Baker Mayfield. He talked about lessons learned from each of them, offering a glimpse into the relationships that helped define his time in Cleveland. But perhaps the biggest takeaway from Bitonio's retirement isn't simply that he's leaving. It's what his departure represents. The Browns are entering a completely new chapter. Think about how many familiar faces from previous playoff teams are gone. The roster is changing. The leadership group is evolving. A younger core is beginning to take over. And whether that's exciting or concerning probably depends on your perspective. What isn't debatable is that Cleveland is entering a new era. And speaking of the future, there was another noteworthy development involving Mason Graham. The young defensive lineman was seen wearing a walking boot on his right foot and was not practicing during minicamp. At this point, there doesn't appear to be any indication of a serious issue, but it's certainly something worth monitoring as the Browns continue preparing for training camp. Meanwhile, the offensive line remains one of the most fascinating position groups on the roster. The Browns rolled out a starting unit that included several players competing for significant roles, and perhaps the most interesting development involved experimentation at guard. Coaches appear interested in finding the best combination possible up front, and several players received opportunities to work with the first-team offense. That may not generate the same headlines as the quarterback battle, but Browns fans know how important offensive line play is to everything this team wants to accomplish. A strong offensive line can elevate the running game. It can accelerate quarterback development. It can completely change an offense. And based on the rotations and experiments we're seeing during minicamp, the coaching staff is clearly determined to find the right combination before the season begins. The overall theme coming out of mandatory minicamp is becoming increasingly clear. Competition. Competition at quarterback. Competition at receiver. Competition along the offensive line. Competition throughout the roster. And honestly, that's probably exactly what this team needs. Because after everything that happened last season, nobody should be handed anything. Every role should be earned. Every snap should matter. Every practice should matter. And right now, that's exactly what we're seeing in Cleveland. Now I want to hear from you, Browns fans. What has been the most encouraging development from mandatory minicamp so far? The quarterback battle? The emergence of the young receivers? The offensive line competition? Or the beginning of a new era after Joel Bitonio's retirement? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're excited to follow every twist and turn of this quarterback battle all the way through training camp and the preseason, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any Browns updates as they happen. Let's go!